Hi guys, this is Mama to Two Howries, and today I wanted to take a deep dive into the staircase incident in the Depp v. Heard trial and go over the accounts of 5 different people for this one incident. And we are going to look at statements, depositions, transcript, and testimony transcript for things that were done in the UK as well as the Virginia case. And so we have Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, Debbie Lloyd, Travis McGivern, and Whitney, who is Amber's sister. Now, before we go into that, let's go back just a little bit and look at some important things that had happened prior to us getting to this March 23rd, 2015. So in February of 2015, Amber and Johnny get married. Now, they had been together for several years prior to this, but they hadn't officially gotten married until February of 2015. Now, after their wedding, about a month after, the Australia incident happened, which is another infamous incident from this case. And there's many other incidents that go along with things that happen in this Depp v. Heard trial and stuff. There's just so many different incidents. But we had the Australia incident. That, I believe, happened on March 7th of 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And then that is where Johnny Depp lost the tip of one of his fingers. And then we have a few weeks later when this staircase incident happened. And if you know any of the details about Australia or the staircase incident, you should know that Depp had a lot of bandaging on his finger still. So, and it was kind of wrapped, I believe, in like a soft cast. It wasn't completely hard, or a hard cast, but it was just a soft cast so that it still allowed for it to be cleaned, and so that it also allowed for inflammation and swelling if it was going to occur. So that hand pretty much was kind of out of commission. And there was some testimony in the trial that does say that if Johnny had actually done some of these things, that you would expect to see some damage done to the cast or his hand, because it was still healing. I mean, it hadn't even been a month since this happened, when they had to fix that finger. So keep that in mind as well as we go through this case. Okay, so this visual I created for y'all so you kind of have something in your mind when we go through these different statements to kind of picture where everybody is, what it looks like, and how things were happening. And so this incident happened pretty much in Penthouse 5. And so we have the stairs going down to this ground floor, first level, which is where the kitchen and living room are at. And I have Debbie kind of positioned over here because I do know that she was in the kitchen and living room at one point. There are other points where she is said to be up on that mezzanine level with Amber and Whitney. But we know for a fact that she was down here at one point. And so then we also have Travis McGivern at the bottom of the stairs. He is there in many of the stories when everything first starts out. And then towards the end of the stories, he has gone up the stairs and is in the middle of Amber and Johnny so that he can separate them and get Johnny out of there. And so then we kind of have Johnny, who I just have him running up the stairs because in all the stories he has to go up the stairs from the first level to get up to this mezzanine level where Amber and Whitney are. And so the mezzanine level and this landing pad, which is where everything was happening, I kind of have illustrated here. And then if you go from the second level up the stairs, you go to the third level, which is where Amber's closet is. And I wanted to include that because the stories do make reference to Amber's closet. So this is kind of just a visual so that you can all see it and picture where everybody is when we're going through these and what's happening to give you a better outlook on that. So here we have Amber Heard's statement in the UK. Now, she had 7 statements total, in which about 3 of those in the UK referenced the staircase incident. And so I just kind of combined all of those mentionings in the UK statements in this slide. But she had to go back and add stuff to it because she had left some stuff out. And so she had to issue another statement on the matter. And so that's why she has so many statements. Now, before we get into the main time frame of them being on the stairs, I want to give you a little bit about what Amber kind of said before everything that we're going to go over in this slide. So she says she knows that Johnny had cheated on her before, but she did not think that he would have carried on doing that after that they were married. She confronted him about it, and he reacted badly because Amber took Johnny's iPad when he was passed out. Now, whether she means passed out from drugs and drinking or she just means he was sleeping. Um, Either way, he was passed out, he was asleep. She got his iPad and she saw messages from a woman named Rochelle. And these messages between Rochelle and Johnny happened like right after the wedding. And so that's why she got mad and she confronted him about it, because she's like, what in the world? We just got married. And so that is her reasoning for getting mad. And by her confronting him and her saying that he reacted badly, and the reason she says this is because she states that Johnny just kept smashing things, um, including some of her possessions and things in her closet. So he was just destroying the place, which many of us know that Johnny has assaulted some materialistic things in a hotel or a cabin. Um, or a trailer, and then he has stated in one of his statements in the Virginia trial that he has assaulted a few couches and assaulted a few cabinets, but those are like materialistic things, not an actual physical element to a person. So when she says this, maybe we can think, oh, well, he's been known to do that, so maybe that part is right. I don't know, but it's a possibility. So after this had happened, she said she left their bedroom and she went into the penthouse next door where her sister Whitney was staying at. And she was telling Whitney, what happened and why she had come to her. And so then she also remembers being, really upset and crying. And, they were shouting at each other and calling each other names. And he went into Whitney's room, I guess. And that's when he started hitting Amber before they've even gotten to the staircase. He had already destroyed a bunch of property and he had already started hitting her well before we get to the stairs. And so she says everything happened so quickly, and so let's see where she goes with these statements. And so first we have that Whitney was in between Johnny and Amber on the mezzanine level. Then we have that she said that JD pushed Whitney out of the way to try to reach her. Whitney had her back to the stairs, and AH was scared that Johnny was going to cause Whitney to fall down the stairs. Amber says that she lunged at JD to stop him from hurting Whitney. Amber also said that she struck JD, but she doesn't know how she got the lick in. She also said after that, she said Johnny had pulled her hair and hit her in the head repeatedly. So, in that statement, Johnny apparently has Amber Heard's hair in one hand, and then with the other hand that has the cast, he is hitting her in the head repeatedly with it. Now, in the first statement that she released about this, she did not mention the cast. But then in a following statement that she gave, she did say, oh yeah, he had a cast. And so he was hitting me with his hand that had the cast on it. And so then she states that, let me see, that is when security stepped in and went to separate Amber and Johnny. So that is her UK statement. Okay, so we went over the UK statements by Amber. Now let's get on to the deposition. We have seen clips of this deposition. We saw some of those clips in the Virginia trial. We did not see the clip from where this was talked about. So this might be new as far as what she said here. And remembering that this was her deposition to be a witness. Just like we saw many depositions of witnesses from Amber's side in this Virginia trial. That is kind of what she did for this UK trial. So she starts off in her deposition stating that one time Johnny was hitting me hard and repeatedly. I was screaming. Guard came in and did nothing. JD made a push-like motion when guard yelled boss or something like that. There wasn't much space between JD and Amber, is what she states. She then says that Whitney runs down the stairs because Johnny and Amber were on the landing pad between two flights of stairs. My guess is that because they were fighting or something, or maybe they weren't fighting at this point. Maybe they were just talking. But Whitney went downstairs, and Johnny and Amber were on that mezzanine level. Amber also says that Johnny was attempting to push Whitney down the stairs. Whitney was trying to break Johnny and I up. I went in trying to protect my baby sister. When Johnny laid hands on Whitney, she says, I don't know what I did. Well, that's a little weird that you don't know what you did. But in this particular statement here, we have Amber stating that Johnny was attempting to push Whitney down the stairs, and Whitney was trying to break us up. But in the statement above, she says Whitney runs down the stairs because Johnny and Amber were on the stairs and on the landing pad. So, was Whitney still downstairs? And when Johnny was attempting to push Whitney down the stairs, was Whitney back upstairs? And Johnny was attempting to push her once she was back up the stairs? Or as Whitney was going down the stairs, did Johnny attempt to push Whitney down the stairs at that point? Which that one doesn't seem likely, because she said that Johnny and herself, Amber, were on the landing pad between the two flights of stairs. She doesn't mention anything about while Whitney was trying to go downstairs, he attempted to push her. So I'm very interested to see how we got from Whitney going downstairs and Amber and Johnny on the mezzanine, and what was happening so between being up down the stairs and attempting to push Whitney down the stairs, what happened in between there? I feel like we're missing some details in this deposition for what she says. But moving forward, Amber goes to state that she jumped in between the action because Amber had seen what could be a fatal injury to Whitney. She again says, I don't know what part of my body I put between Whitney and Johnny. She was defending Whitney as anyone would do, and that she was worried about Whitney because they were standing at the top of the stairs. So it also seems very convenient that she doesn't remember how she put her body in between Whitney and Johnny, nor does she remember what she did to Johnny once Johnny had laid hands on Whitney. She doesn't know what she did in either one of those situations. It seems pretty convenient at the 2 points that you might have actually been violent or done something that you can't remember. If only everything ran that way. Every time we did something bad, we just don't know what we did. So we can't say for sure. But that is Amber Heard's deposition in the UK. So now, in continuing with Amber Heard's statements, deposition, now we have the testimony of the U.S. trial. And so the next two slides, we are going to go over what she said on the stand. So according to Amber, she got Johnny's iPad when he was passed out and freaked out because of the stuff that was on it. She said that she didn't care if he killed her, which was likely to happen based on Australia and how the relationship had been going. She says she was heartbroken, and that is why she, I guess, didn't care if Johnny was to kill her. So she was heartbroken. She said she was yelling and screaming, and she told him to get the F out. So there was name calling in that, as well as we heard from Heard that was happening. So then, after she kind of goes into what was going on previously, she said in Penthouse 3, they were pushing each other. Now Penthouse 3 is where Johnny and Amber's bedroom is. So they were in the bedroom when she got his iPad and when she confronted him. And so she says they were pushing each other. She was so mad. She was breaking out of the grasp of his grasp, and then goes to Whitney's room. Then she said that Johnny came into Penthouse 4 and he grabs her and she got free again. So Penthouse 4 is where Whitney is staying. And he has now grabbed her again. And then after he grabs her and Amber gets free, Johnny walks out of the room. She said she was trying to stand up for herself, and he was always throwing me, shoving me, hitting me in the face at that point in the relationship. And so he had his uncast hand in Amber's hair. And then Johnny let go and he left. Then she hears him screaming from Penthouse 5. And she's going to go and see what was he screaming about. Because you just go out into the opening to check out why he's screaming when you have just been beaten, according to Amber. So here we continue with Amber's statement Amber's testimony in the U.S. She said she went to the second level and Debbie Lloyd, who is Johnny's sobriety nurse, Travis McGivern, who is one of the security, and Johnny, they were all sitting on the couch. And she said that Johnny stood up. He was drinking a Red Bull. Then Debbie Lloyd came up the stairs to the second level to comfort Amber. And Whitney went downstairs at that same time. So then she says that JD threw the Red Bull can he was drinking up and hit or almost hit, we can't be too sure which one, Debbie Lloyd, the nurse. She said that me and Johnny were still screaming at each other, and then Johnny bolted up the stairs. And she said, I don't even know how he got his hand in my hair, and he was yanking Amber down and just hitting her in the face with the cast he had. She said it was a brief struggle, then she breaks away, and Whitney puts herself in between Amber and Johnny. And Whitney had her back to the staircase, and Johnny swings at her. He swings at Whitney. And she just all of a sudden went to thinking, oh, Kate Moss and the stairs. She didn't wait, and she had no hesitation, and she just swung at Johnny. And that's when she clocked him. That's the first time that she had actually landed a punch, and never in their entire relationship has she ever been able to land one, which is an interesting thing to say, because when you say something like, it's the first time you've landed one, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you have attempted to land one several times before? Or in her mind, what she is probably stating is that is the first time in her whole relationship that she has actually punched him. And, she says, of course, that, she has defended herself and she has, flailed and different things like that, but she had never been able to land a punch. So that is her testimony for the U.S. case. So that is the end of her statements. What do you think about the 3 different statements that she has pretty much given for this entire UK case, where she was a witness in the Depp suing the son, and in this case where Depp sues Amber? 2 different cases, 2 different parties, even though Amber and Johnny and their relationship had, kind of was a core of the both trials. They were 2 completely different situations. So next we will be getting into Johnny Depp. Okay, so we are going to now get into JD's statements. And first we have JD's statement in the UK trial. And he starts by saying that him, Amber, and Whitney were in Penthouse 5 with Amber provoking Johnny with another argument. Johnny claims that he was not violent with Amber or Whitney at any point. He also stated that Amber lied about fearing WH being pushed down the stairs. She could see with her own eyes that it wasn't going to occur, nor did it look like it was going to occur. So he is saying that whatever she thinks was going to happen, it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't look like that was going to happen. So, and she saw that with her own eyes, that Johnny was not going to push Whitney down the stairs. So her saying that she thought that, or that's what she saw, Johnny is saying that Amber lied about that. And then he goes on to say that Amber tried to prevent him from leaving and berated him with more rage. Now, with this statement, we can kind of picture this happening because we have heard audios where Amber does not like when Johnny leaves or runs away, as she says, when they're in an argument or a fight. She doesn't like him running from the problems. She needs him to stay and work it out, as she has said in some of the audios. And so him saying that she tried to prevent him from leaving, that sounds like it very much could be true based on other evidence that we have heard. From heard. Sorry, play on words. So after that, he says that he summons Debbie Lloyd and Travis McGibbon to intervene. And when Debbie and Travis, the security guard, had arrived, that Johnny and Amber had been in a verbal argument for the last hour and a half. So, continuing on with the UK statement, we are going to go over here. And the next thing he says is, at some point, he tried to leave, and Amber threw a can of Red Bull, striking me in the back. So Johnny is saying that Amber threw the Red Bull and it hit him in the back. Now, Amber is still on the mezzanine level, that second level, while Johnny is downstairs with Debbie and Travis. So after he got hit with the Red Bull in the back, shortly after, Amber threw a purse or a bag um, at him, but it was blocked from hitting him by Travis. So Travis um, blocked him so that he wouldn't be hit with another item thrown by Amber. Travis was trying to protect Johnny, and he was standing in between Amber and Johnny, but Amber still managed to lunge and punch Johnny with a closed fist in the face. And Johnny says that it caused visible swelling and injury. And shortly after that, Johnny, Debbie, and Travis all left the penthouse, or the ECB, which is the Eastern Columbia building. They just left that whole thing. So after he says all that, he also states that he did not grab Amber's hair, and he did not hit her repeatedly. Johnny states that that is a complete lie. It is completely untrue, according to Johnny. Now, moving on to Johnny's last statement. And so this comes from Johnny's testimony on the stand in the United States. And he says that his hand was still a fresh wound. He thinks he had the pin still, or the pin was put in before this incident, and it was bandaged like a soft cast. He had also had ended up between Australia and the staircase incident. He ended up with MRSA, and the MRSA pain, he says, was on a high scale, and I believe he stated that on a scale from 1 to 10 that it was like a 12. So that infection, which if any of you know what MRSA is, it is not something that anybody wants. And if the infection, it can get in the bloodstream, it can kill you. But thankfully it did not to him. And he just had the pain, and now he's on the other side of all of this in present day. But this is what is going on with his hand, and things that have happened before the staircase incident. So he wants you to imagine that my hand was in this condition. And he wants you to think about that when you listen to Amber and Whitney's statements. Because if he was doing what they said he was doing, how might that affect Johnny's hand that was in the soft cast? So we go from the confrontation in Penthouse 5, which is Amber's office area. And the landing said Amber came at him trying to hit him. He said that Whitney stepped in the way and she was facing AH to stop Amber. Then Amber swung and clocked him in right on the cheekbone. He does say something about roundhouse, but his motion when he's giving his testimony is like somebody swinging their arm around, and roundhouse it has to do with like your feet coming up and punching somebody. So he's not saying that's what happened. That was just the word he used, but his arm was doing the swinging motion, showing what Amber had done when she clocked him on the cheekbone. But also interesting in the statement, he says that Whitney stepped in to stop Amber, not what Whitney stated or what Amber stated. Amber stated that Whitney came in to stop Johnny. So who was Whitney coming in to stop? Now, there is other testimony, or there's a letter from someone named Jennifer Howell, who used to be Whitney's boss, that the way that Whitney speaks and the things that she says in her testimony and statements is not what Whitney had told Jennifer Howell when she went and stayed with her. Now, whether Whitney did say the things the way that Whitney's old boss Jennifer Howell is stating, or whether Whitney said exactly what she said on the stand and in her UK witness statement. So we won't know. That's a lot of he said, she said, or in this case it's she said. But those are just other factors to take in that happened in this case and things that we have heard or seen. So which version do you think Whitney was stepping in for? Was she stepping in to stop Amber, or was she stepping in to stop Johnny? Moving on. Travis McGivern was on the bottom of the stairs. Debbie Lloyd was by the front door, and they left to get out of there, and something was thrown, like a bag at some point, and I believe he says like a bag of pencils or something from like Amber's office is what he said. Now, what was in the bag, or whether it was a bag or a purse, I don't know, but a bag is mentioned in the statements too. Now, if a bag's being thrown at you, do you know what's in the bag? Probably not, especially when you're going to leave. So that is where his testimony kind of ends. On this slide, I have defendants, or actually plaintiffs, 146 in evidence. And this was submitted for the staircase incident on March 23rd, 2015. Even though people are saying that this photo was entered for Amber's 30th birthday, which is April of 2016, but that is not accurate. It was submitted for this March 23rd, 2015 incident, which matches completely to the top of the picture where it has the time and date stamp on it. So I got this picture from the Fairfax County website. I will leave a link to that in the description, and so if you want to go and look at this exhibit or any of the other exhibits, you will be able to do that. Another good place to look at statements and different things like that is a place called Depp Dive. I think it's deppdive.com, and they have everything very organized over there. It's a great place to go and look. So I will also leave a link to that website in the description as well. So after this video, if you want to go over there and just look around, you definitely can do that. So we can see here that this is Depp, and this is after Amber punched him in this staircase incident. And you can see, you know, he's got markings and stuff like that from where she hit him. So I wanted to show you that. I would have shared a picture of any injuries on Amber, but nothing for her and this incident, and no images were shown in the trial. So there's not any sort of evidence to show the injuries that in her story that Johnny had done to her. So, but Johnny does have a picture of what happened to him. So that is something I wanted to add into this. And so we will be moving on from Johnny now. Now we are going to get into Debbie Lloyd's testimony. She was a nurse. She was Depp's nurse. Basically, she was his sobriety nurse, and she also helped out with Amber and some things as well. Um, but her main role was um, for Johnny. So I have her U.S. testimony. Um, and then after I go over this U.S. testimony, I am going to read something that was put into a statement, or it was a text that went into the UK trial. So here we have, she says that Johnny Depp has never thrown anything at her. This part was stated in the UK trial as well. She says that she was staying at a hotel near the loft when she got the call that Johnny wanted to leave. And from my understanding, the hotel was within walking distance of the ECB and Amber and Johnny's penthouses. So she left from the hotel and she went over to the penthouse 5. She states that she saw Johnny knock over one of Amber's clothes racks. That was the only thing that she had really seen him do as far as destruction goes. And she said this is one of many arguments that she has seen between Johnny and Amber. And it's also not the first time that Johnny has wanted to leave to go elsewhere in the past as well, to get away from Amber during or after some of these arguments. He just wanted to get away, which we have heard audios that state that. He says he doesn't want to stay and have to deal with the arguments or the fighting. He needs to separate and have cooling off time and before they come back to it. So, and that's a good thing for anybody to kind of do, is if things are getting bad, take some time apart. You know, whether it's the night, whether it's an hour, 5 minutes, whatever it is. That way, once you do that and you calm down, or you both had time to calm down, you can go back into a conversation about it without being all worked up. So I think that's a good way to do things. I do not think walking away is abuse. I just can't see that. If somebody does, explain it to me. I just don't see it. Even if having fear of abandonment or separation and things like that, and you don't like it, but for walking away so things don't get any more heightened, I just don't see that as abuse. Maybe some do. It's just not something that I see. So I think that's that statement from Debbie Lloyd, I think that could be a true statement there, because we do have other evidence that shows that he does that. Um, she states that she does not remember really any um, many specifics from the night other than what she had talked about and answered to, um, and things that had been written in her notes. And even some of those she knows she wrote them, but she doesn't remember writing them. So we can you can take that however you want. But it has been it's been over 5 years, and there were so many notes um, with Johnny and his sobriety and different injuries and things like that. And she was documenting, sometimes on the hour, sometimes it was once a day, sometimes it was twice, more than that, for many years. And then, we have the over 5 years that she hasn't worked um, for him. So her not necessarily remembering that, I don't think it's that big of a red flag. I I think that can happen. Um, I mean, how many of us have written texts and let's say from 5 years ago or over 5 years ago, would we remember that? Oh yeah, I remember texting that. Or would most of us say like, well, it says I texted, but so I guess I did, but yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember writing that. Um, so I think it's very, very possible, um, and I don't think it's a big deal that she doesn't necessarily remember every single detail of that night or every single note that she ever made in her nurse's notes in caring for Johnny or Amber. So that is what her testimony was in the U.S. Now, a text that she sent that was submitted in the UK was she sent this text to Travis McGivern, uh, which again is Depp's one of Depp's security guards, and she said, she stated she had to separate the pair after the furious bust up, and the next text read out to the High Court, which is the judge in the UK trial. Bad night last night. They got into it and got violent again, and it got violent again. I had to separate them, and we are 80 now. So I think, yes, they did get into it. She said it got violent again. She didn't say Johnny got violent again. She didn't say Amber got violent again. She just said that it did. So no names in that. Granted, Travis would know what she's talking about because he was there too. And then they did have to be separated. Everybody says in every single one of these statements that Johnny and Amber had to be separated. And then I think the little joke at the end that they are 80 now is kind of just her way of saying this, all this is aging us. All the stress, having to deal with all of this, it makes us feel like we're 80 years old. And stress can age you, and dealing with those types of things, uh, it can age you. It can make you feel older. It can wear you out to where you just don't seem to have much energy. As like most 80-year-olds don't have much energy. So I think her little joke there was just stating those things. But if you think it means something else, let me know. And that is going to be the end for Debbie Lloyd. Okay, so moving on to the next person, we are going to discuss Travis McGibbon and his statement in the UK. So Travis says in his statement that he was outside the apartment until things got louder and more intense. He entered the apartment in a general vicinity, so he was inside the apartment, but not necessarily in there. All up in Amber and Johnny's business, because he said he entered and he without intervening. He said that happened about 30 to 45 minutes after he had arrived. He said Amber threw a Red Bull and hit Johnny in his back from up on the mezzanine level. And Travis said he went to stand near Johnny after this so he wouldn't get hit with anything else. Travis also says that Whitney's statement about the Red Bull was not true. He goes on to say that Amber spit on JD from above on that mezzanine level, and also Amber threw a purse at Johnny, but Travis was able to deflect that in midair. So he kept it from hitting Johnny, which is his job. And then he said 10 minutes before he left, 10 minutes before they left, Travis says he witnessed Amber punch Johnny in the eye with a closed fist. He says that Johnny never pushed Whitney. Johnny never held Amber's hair with one hand and was hitting her repeatedly. He said at no point did this happen. And he said that himself and Debbie didn't step in to separate them. So I don't know if he meant that while the action was going on that him and Debbie stepped in. he might have gotten Johnny and told him, let's go. But we shall see. That's a big question I have on that one. Is that just that very last part? Is knowing what did he mean when he stated that. Another thing I want to bring up is that in this statement, he starts his statement in the UK with the point from when they had already gone up to the apartment and him and Debbie kind of stood outside the apartment. And in the next one, where it is his U.S. testimony, you will see here that in the U.S., during his direct, Travis starts it before they get to the apartment for the staircase incident. That he talks about all the things that happened that got him from where he was to the point of them being in the apartment and them leaving, which he did not state the things from the beginning before entering the apartment in his UK statement. He only started from them being at the apartment. So Rottenborn and Cross tries to throw Travis McGivern off because he says, well, you didn't say anything about the lobby and all that in your UK statement. You stated that you were outside the apartment. And I don't think that's as big of a got you moment as Rottenborn thinks it is, because while he did just focus on being in the apartment and the stuff that happened in the apartment and them leaving in the UK statement, in his testimony in the US, he went even further back. But he still does get to the point in the testimony where you can see very clearly that that is where he is picking up right back to what he had stated in his UK statement. So there's just a little bit of like backstory prior to them getting, Debbie and Travis getting into the apartment. So I don't think it's like, oh, this is what you said. Yes, he did, but I think the UK statement was just to speak about that particular incident, not anything else related to any events. So let me know if you think that's a big deal, that in the US he went further back, but in the UK he just started talking about it when they were outside the apartment, because Rottenborn seems to think it's a big deal. So let's get into his U.S. testimony. Travis says that at between 4:30, Johnny texted him to meet him in Penthouse 5 and that Johnny wanted him to bring Debbie Lloyd, the nurse, too. Travis states that Debbie and Travis ran into Amber in the lobby, and that Debbie stayed down there with Amber, and that Travis himself went up to Penthouse 5 to Johnny. He says that Johnny was sitting in front of the front door, and he had bags. They were just about getting ready to leave when they ran into Debbie and Amber. And then from that point, they all decided to go back into Penthouse 5. So Johnny, Amber, Debbie, and Travis are all back in Penthouse 5. So that Johnny and Amber they were going to finish their conversation. They wanted to finish it. So then, and here's where we pick up in his UK statement, that Debbie and him were outside, but they had the door propped until things got louder. And then Debbie and Travis went inside. They stayed out of the way to let Johnny and Amber have their space. He says that he went to stand next to Johnny, and they were both yelling. There was verbal vitriol at each other, some name calling, and at some point he says he saw Amber throw a Red Bull can at Johnny, and it hit him in the back. So moving on and continuing with Travis's U.S. testimony, we get to him saying, then later, Amber threw a purse and or a bag. He had knocked it away so that it wouldn't hit Johnny. He states that Amber spit on Johnny, and Johnny was mad and upset. But at this point, Whitney and Amber had left that mezzanine level, left the stairs. So after they left the stair area, Johnny went upstairs to the third level to rearrange Amber's closet. As he put it, Johnny rearranged it. I would not like to ever call on Depp to rearrange things for me if this is what rearranging for him looks like. I will not be hiring him. And he said that Johnny threw a rack down the stairs, and in the closet he had knocked over a bunch of clothes and shoe racks. And then I guess Amber and Whitney maybe hear all this happening, so they come back into the Penthouse 5 on the second level again. Travis does say here that he stepped between Amber and Johnny to tell him we are leaving. So see here, he says he stepped in. Now, was Was he just stepping in to say, nope, we're getting out of here? Or was he stepping in the middle of stuff that was occurring, if that makes sense? And he said that after he had told Johnny that they were going to leave, he said Amber's fist came across his right shoulder to hit Johnny in the face. And he says he thinks Whitney was behind Amber. And Rottenborg kind of made a big deal out of that as well, saying, well, you think Whitney was behind her? Are you sure she wasn't behind Johnny, or she wasn't standing by her? He was really focusing on the fact that he thought Whitney was behind him. But because he didn't say she was behind him, or he knows, or she was definitely behind him, Rottenborg attempted to attack that particular statement. He also says that Johnny never hit or threw anything at Whitney or Amber, and that Johnny had heavily bandage on his hand where he lost the tip of his finger. So that is his U.S. testimony about the staircase incident. Something else that he did say was that him and Johnny, who were shocked, they moved down to the lower level for his safety. Travis also says that he felt like he hadn't done his job to keep Johnny safe, and because it's Travis's job to protect Johnny. That's why he has security, so that things like this don't happen. But he said that Debbie and Johnny went to the bathroom, and then when they were going to leave, Johnny told him that the shiner, which was swollen and red, was my fault, and he was mad at me. He said he never hit or threw anything at Whitney or Amber, and again that his hand was heavily bandaged. Alright, last person involved in this incident is Whitney Enriquez, or Amber's younger sister. So here is Whitney's statement that she provided in the UK. Whitney stated in the UK that she had walked downstairs to Johnny and Debbie in the kitchen, and that Amber came out of penthouse 5 to the mezzanine level of the stairs, and that Johnny on the lower level, the ground floor, is where Johnny was at. And when Amber came out, Whitney went back up the stairs to calm Amber. And she says that with JD on the ground floor with 2 security guards, which there was only one, so maybe she's grouping Debbie Lloyd, the nurse, in as a second, but she states that Johnny is with 2 security people. And she said that Johnny threw the Red Bull at Amber and Whitney, and it hits Debbie Lloyd. And that security didn't intervene. So with this, I guess she wouldn't be classifying Debbie for a second security guard. So if there was another security guard with Travis, I do not know about him. There hasn't been any statements that particular one has released. The only one that has released anything that was security that night is Travis. So she's not lumping Debbie in with this statement because Debbie is up there with Whitney and Amber. But she's stating that even with this, security didn't intervene. And she states that Johnny came up the stairs yelling, and Whitney said that she stood with her back to the stairs facing Amber, but between Johnny and Amber. So, I mean, technically she could be, she would, if Amber's on one side and Whitney's in the middle with her back to the stairs facing Amber, and then Johnny was coming up the stairs, then yeah, I guess she's in between them. But then she says when Johnny got to the top of the stairs, she said he pulled her backwards to get to Amber. And I was worried I would fall down the stairs. So interesting there. And she said that Johnny reached out to shove Whitney out of the way to lunge and hit Amber, but hit me in my arm instead. So this is interesting because in the above reading, she is in between Johnny and Amber, and once Johnny got to the top of the stairs, she said that Johnny pulled her backwards to get Amber. And that she was worried that she was going to fall down the stairs, which, okay, pulled me back, so he could have, like, pulled her back. And I could see if that was happening and Johnny was kind of behind her, then pulling her back if that was the way it happened, I could see she was worried that she was going to fall down the stairs. But in the next section, she says that Johnny reached out to shove her out of the way. So he's pulling you back, and you were worried that you were going to fall down the stairs, but then he also shoves you out of the way to get to Amber and hit her. But instead of hitting Amber, Whitney says that Johnny hit her in the arm instead. So in this statement, Amber did not get punched. Whitney did. And there was shoving and pulling. So some of this stuff doesn't line up to me. But moving on with Whitney and her UK statement. Amber, she said Amber lurched forward to hit Johnny, saying, "Don't hit my sister." She said there was a struggle with herself, Whitney stuck in the middle. She said JD went for Amber, somehow pushed Whitney herself out of the way, so Whitney was no longer between Amber and Johnny, but standing next to them. He said then Johnny grabbed Amber by the hair with one hand and punching Amber hard in the head with the other hand multiple times. She said that security did step in now in pulling Amber and Johnny apart, and that's when they intervened. And that security was at the bottom of the stairs previously, but now they're up there and intervening. So before we go into the next statement, so in the first part of the statement, Johnny didn't hit Amber at that point. He hit Whitney. And this is the first time we hear about Johnny hitting Amber, because I believe in Amber's statement, she said she was afraid that Johnny was going to push her down the stairs. So Amber did not even claim that Johnny hit Whitney. So that's interesting. But even though Johnny didn't hit Amber in an attempt to hit Amber in the first part of the statement, now, later in the incident, he did start punching her. And so then as we move on, the cast was not mentioned in a first statement, and when Whitney was asked why, she said that it wasn't as memorable as the shock of it being the first time that she saw Johnny be violent to Amber. So him having a cast wasn't as memorable as he was hitting her sister over the head. That wasn't memorable, or not as memorable as just it being the first time Whitney had ever seen Johnny actually physically abuse Amber. Because before that, she had never seen any of it. She had been told about this stuff, but she had never witnessed it firsthand, as she said she did in this staircase incident. Now, this is what they alleged happened. I'm not saying that it actually did happen. This is just what she said she saw. But Whitney does go on to say that when Johnny was in the kitchen, that Johnny was drinking whiskey around Debbie, his sobriety nurse. And she did also say that Amber didn't seem like she hit Johnny very hard. But she didn't know how she hit him. She also says that she tried to push herself back in between Amber and Johnny when after she states that Johnny pushed her out of the way and she was standing next to them instead of in between. She's saying that she tried to get in the middle. So I don't know where the Red Bull comes in. If Johnny was drinking whiskey, maybe, I mean, in her story, maybe he had a Red Bull down there too, but she saw him drinking whiskey in front of his sobriety nurse. She kind of thought that was weird. So, that is the UK. Now we move into the US testimony of Whitney. So when she was on the stand in Virginia. So she starts by saying that she went in Penthouse 5, she went to the kitchen to where Johnny and Debbie. She said Amber was on the mezzanine level. And she did go back upstairs to Amber. Debbie came up the stairs with her as well. That JD hurls a Red Bull from the kitchen and it hit Debbie in the back. And she also states that her back is to the stairs and Johnny comes up behind her. So she says that Johnny ran up the stairs behind her and hits me in the back. And then says that Amber lands one saying, "Don't hit my sister." And then security came upstairs. She lastly said that JD grabbed Amber's hair with one hand while whacking her face in the face repeatedly with the others, and that she was just standing there. The guard pulls them apart, and Amber and Whitney go back to penthouse 3 and lock the doors. So penthouse 3 is where Whitney stayed, and that is her testimony for the U.S. Something I want to point out, though, is in the U.S. testimony, she says that Johnny hit her in the back, whereas in the UK, she said that Johnny pulled her back and she was fearful of falling down the stairs, and that Johnny went to hit Amber but hit Whitney in the arm. So in these two statements, the stories aren't consistent, and nor is Whitney's statement fully consistent with Amber, where Amber states that Johnny was going to push her down the stairs. So, which one is it? So, this is where we are going to leave this video. Thank you for sticking with me. I know it was a lot to go through, but like I said, I wanted to do a deep dive into all the statements of the staircase incident. Please like and subscribe. I am hoping to get another video out about some, I guess, evidence and facts that weed out some of the stuff that the UK judgment had and how they had their rulings on those 12 of 14 accounts, and look into those and see, okay, on this count, this is what the UK said, but now that we've had the US trial and we have all this other evidence, would this judgment still be the same, knowing everything that we know? So hopefully you join me back for this, and I hope you'll have a good one, and I will see you next time.